Přeju vám krásné sobotní odpoledne a vítám vás na téhle besedě na téma barevných příběhů, inkluze a neurodiverzity. Zeptám se rovnou, jsou tady všichni mluvící česky, nebo is there anyone who's only English speaking and doesn't understand Czech? Okay, there are some. I'm gonna count with that. We're going to be talking about many wonderful stories that my guests experienced and wonderful people who were very diverse that they've met in their lives. But sometimes it can happen that we will talk also about some hard things that might someone make feel queasy, uneasy. Don't worry, don't mind to walk out if you don't feel that good, and you can always come back at the end and chat individually. Both of the guys are very, very willing to talk to you individually about any challenges or problems that you might be facing. So, a very, very long intro, but this is going to be very short. Please welcome Tony Osgood, writer, and Brian McDonald, behavior specialist. Here you go. No, sorry. Yeah. This is going to be a little bit of chaos. Yes. I have to sit here because of the cameras for some reason. Thank you very much. Yeah. I find it quite funny, guys, that we are going to be talking about neurodiversity, and you both look the same. Oh, Walter. Yeah.
And we dress the same.
Yes. I think there's some kind of mold for people who, do take care about neurodivergent people. Is it possible? Is this like standard uniform?
We just didn't want to make each other feel uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Or we should have had a conversation this morning before we came out and said, what are you wearing?
Yeah.
Well, I think we should start with explaining what do we mean by neurodiversity, because that's going to be the biggest topic today. So what do each of you understand under the word neurodiversity?
Me? Okay. So for me, neurodiversity means different ways of thinking and experiencing the universe. So there's a kind of like a neurological basis. So one of the issues is that we think the world is as it is, but that definition of how we should experience the world, how we should express ourselves, is written by boring people at the middle of the bell curve. And that's considered normal. And if you're not considered normal, there's something wrong with you. And many people with autism, many people with ADHD, many people with different ways of perceiving the world thought that was acutely unfair because it became a diagnostic problem. And it's not. It's just a different way of experiencing the universe. So neurodiverse people experience the same physical universe but experience it differently.
I might have slightly different interpretation of it. And I suppose my concern is that the whole concept of neurodiversity is what I would say it's been weaponized. It's become a problem. And that might be hard for people to hear, but the reason I say that is if you take the definition of neurodiversity, you have a different way of thinking and a different neurology and a different thought patterns and different ways of experiencing the world. There's 8.1 billion people in the world, which means unless you're a clone, there are 8.1 billion diverse people in the world, all with a different neurodiversity. In an attempt, I say, to create a better situation for people who have these additional issues or additional needs, that it almost has become kind of reverse othering. Now neurotypicals are the enemy, but I would probably argue there are no neurotypicals because there's 8.1 billion neurodiverse people, and then if you're really talking about inclusion, you're talking about how do we include 8.1 billion different people. That could get me kicked off the stage.
And if I may, the counter-argument, because there's always academics, there's always a counter-argument. In the same way that we had in feminism, white feminists saying, well, you don't need to have a specialist field of study because you're a black woman. black women would say, no, 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 we do need black feminism because we're excluded from the white feminist discourse. So one of the reasons for autistic individuals or people who think or perceive differently to hold on tightly to neurodiversity is because it's an identifier. It's very easy to say, well, we're all human, let's just get on with it. But the reason people have been pushed to the edges is because they have actually been excluded. So that's, and it's interesting, neurodiversity came from autistic activists. It didn't come from professionals.
Yeah. Oh, no idea. Yeah, and I agree. Because I watched, I'm on TikTok now, I'm 52 years of age, and I finally found TikTok, really to annoy my daughter who's 17. And a thing came up last night, Denzel Washington, who is a black actor, and he was asked a question about, did you always need a black director to direct a black film, a black cultural film? And he said, no, it's not about color, it's about culture. It's about identity, it's why, and I'm just giving you exactly what he said. He said that, Martin Scorsese directed Goodfellas because that's his culture. He could represent that. Steven Spielberg has a different culture, and they probably could do a good job, but they're not culturally connected to the issues, so it's not going to be as good a job.
Well, we already talked about autism and ADHD. What are the other most common types of neurodiversity that we haven't mentioned yet?
So my answer is, it depends. And the reason it depends is because neurodiversity isn't fixed. It started amongst the autistic community, and then it extended to ADHD. It then extended to include some individuals with personality disorder, as it's considered, and then mental health issues. So when the question is, what is neurodiversity, that comes to Brian's point as, well, it could be anyone, which really annoys the autistic originators of neurodiversity, because here are other people stealing our concept and suddenly we're just the same as everyone else. And we're not the same as everyone else. We are diverse, hence neurodiversity. So they feel the power's been taken away. But broadly speaking, at the moment, it's largely the autisms, because there are various presentations of autism. It's largely ADHD and related attention issues. And it often includes people with what are considered mental health challenges. But the issue of calling it neurodiversity is because one of the issues is, if we rely on ADHD as a term, there's this horrible word in the middle of that called disorder. And people would argue, I'm not disordered, I'm absolutely fine, thank you very much. And who is it that's telling me I'm disordered? I'm just different. So it's a disputed term, and some autistic people hate the term, and some autistic people hate being called autistic. Some people prefer to be people with autism. My daughter and every autistic person I know tell me off if I fall into the trap of trying not to be offensive and say people with autism, and my daughter says, I'm autistic. I'm sorry, I've been conditioned by social services and the health service to not be exclusive. So it's a disputed term. So one of the things with categories I find is to say, what's your name? How do you want to be referred to? And most people say, as a human, with voice and choice and autonomy and agency. And that's a pretty useful way of going about life, I think.
And similarly with the ADHD, the autism spectrum disorder, as was, some of the most ordered people I would know are autistic. It's us that have, some issues with our lack of planning and lack of ability to predict and cope with and order our lives. Autism spectrum disorder is a disservice, really, I think. In Ireland, there's a gentleman called Adam Harris, and he's an autistic individual who is the chief executive of an organization called As I Am. It's an autism organization, and he does talks like this, and he was the first person I really heard talking about, I'm autistic. I'm not a person with autism, I'm autistic. I'm not autistic, okay? Part of what happens is people like myself get into trouble because you can't speak for us because you're not that. You know, you're not autistic, you can't speak for us. But I'm not speaking for people. I'm trying to represent, you know, those that are struggling maybe to find a foot or get a platform. I'm struggling, or I'm trying to help them to be heard or to be understood and be communicated, because I work with a slightly different population, okay? But I asked Adam, and I said, I'm going to be challenged on stage or in engagements when I say an autistic person. People are going to say, we've always been told person first language, a person with autism. And he said something, and it's the simplest thing in the world. He said, I can't be a person without autism. And instantly you get it. He said, I can't be a person without autism. And to be honest, I wouldn't want to be. And that's, you know, that explains some of that.
My daughter, my middle daughter, is autistic, and she's fabulous. You know, she's the best person in the universe as far as I'm concerned. But I remember her reviewing some of my teaching I was doing for the university, and she had, well, I know I've got it wrong when she says, can I just ask a question? And I go, oh, crap, what have I got wrong this time? And she said, and this was years ago, she said, where does the woman end and the autistic begin? And if you can't point to that, then just call me autistic, because you can't take away my experience of the autistic brain from my human experience and as my experience as a woman. So it's really difficult when you are talking and supporting a group of people or individuals and you can't speak for them. What you can do is be an ally. And the only way to be an ally is to ask them their opinion, to work collaboratively with people. And whenever I'm given the choice, so when I was teaching at university, it was really important for me when I was asked every year, can you go and talk about autism? I'd go, yes, I'd love to. I know this person would be really good at though. And they could do it that, couldn't we? And they go, oh, well, all right then. And then I would just turn up, and it would turn out I would just happen to shut up, and they would spend 2 hours talking. Because it's their voice, and if I can offer a platform, that's fine.
Well, similarly, I was asked to talk to therapy professionals, occupational therapists, speech and language therapists, students in a university in Ireland about autism. And I similarly thought, I would never call myself an expert at anything. Fishing, I'm good at fishing, okay, but I would never call myself an expert, you know, in this field, because you're learning all the time. But so I was asked to talk to these people about my experiences of supporting autistic individuals. And on the same bill, on the same program, was an autistic man called Paul, who I've never met before. And I said to Paul, I said, I'm very nervous about talking about autism because, you know, you're autistic. I don't want to misrepresent. And again, similar to Adam, he said, autistic people are supposed to have difficulties with social situations and norms. This is the generalization. But Paul put me at ease straight away. And he said, Brian, I don't know anything about autism. I just know about what my life is like. And I was, brilliant, thank you, you know.
Wonderful. So can you guys, not as experts, but as allies, try to describe how do people with neurodiversity or neurodivergent mind live with most of the, how do they perceive world and life?
Very carefully. They will often experience prejudice. They will experience exclusion. They will experience being told they are not good enough. They will experience all of those things that in a liberal society we say we've kind of eliminated those things. But here's the thing, we know that people may have human rights, but actually pursuing them requires organisation. So for example here, this is a great venue, I really like it. But I know my Yumi, my autistic daughter, would freak out because of the lights and because of the moving balls that might fall at any time and might confuse me, the light coming through the windows, the bright, that's before I even talk about how much you smell. No offence, but it's a hot day. So for Yumi, her filter that we take for granted if we are neurotypical isn't the same And as lovely as humans appear to be, I know I shouldn't trust you because you don't say what you mean and you never mean what you say. You talk in metaphor. You say things like, oh, it's raining cats and dogs, when there are no dogs falling from the sky and there are no cats falling from the sky. You say things like, let's toast the bride, which is pretty damn horrific if we think about this literally, okay? So what I've learned is that the things I take for granted cannot be taken for granted for everyone. So they live often in a state of constant anxiety. Girls are better at boys at masking this. So that's why we think actually there's not a significant clinical difference between the number of boys and the number of girls. It just means our way of assessing is so male-centric, we miss it. Right? It would not surprise you to find out that most assessments for autism were written by white men to identify white boys. So therefore, the indications that this affects boys more than girls is probably wrong. So in my career, being fortunate enough to work in services and in psychology and at the university, I work with some wonderful people who self-harmed, who self-injured. And that's disturbing. And it's hard, and it's tough. But it wouldn't often take me long to be there sitting, listening to people and going, this isn't about self-harm, this is autism. This is autism. No one said this is autism. And it's because we don't have the definitional tools to describe it. So if you want to know what the people I have worked alongside and what my daughter would describe, living in a world when you're neurodivergent is just exhausting and hard work and anxious. And that means I can hold it together here, but I might need to go and scream somewhere for 10 minutes after school. Thank you very much. And I might need to do things that you are going to feel is really weird because I feel things differently than you. You might like this chair because it's soft and it's plush. My daughter might go, this is like sitting on a knife. So people experience a different world.
I think it's a lot of time about the capacity to cope, okay, to be able to deal with whatever. And the people that I work with predominantly are not able to speak for themselves. They're, you know, I've the autism and the intellectual disability and the cognitive difficulties and the sensory issues and the communication difficulties. And living in an environment that maybe isn't meeting their needs or is actually, you know, probably causing quite a few of their difficulties, you know. So the analogy I use for the sort of work that I do is that I'm basically like an interpreter. You know, my job is to make that language that they're giving us understandable to everybody else. So when Pavel hits himself, what he's telling us is he's frightened that the balls might fall down. The lights are hurting his face, you know. And the difficulty for a lot of the people that I would work with is that sometimes they don't have an interpreter or they have a bad one. A bit like AI, you know. So I have to have a dig. A bit like AI, you know. If AI is only capturing 50% of what I'm saying, then people are learning half as much, you know. So when a client is trying to talk, when a resident or a person we're supporting is trying to tell us things with their behavior, and they don't have a good representative, someone who's an ally, who's there to help them to communicate with the system, they're in big trouble, okay? And what tends to happen is, in my line of work, is the system tries to fix them as the problem instead of see them as a person having problems in that system.
And I mean, it's interesting, this issue of voice. And like you, the majority of people I've supported over the years have been non-verbal. And so for me, when I talk, so I'm particularly bad at communicating. So I talk about listening to people when they tell us stuff. And people always assume I mean verbally. And I don't. What I mean is people tell us through their behavior. And when I say we need to listen to people, I mean we need to attend to them physically, sensorily, not just verbally. because people are telling us all the time. And in the field of challenging behaviour, where we both kind of learn how to dress and look the same, obviously, in challenging behaviour, we have spent the last 30, 40 years trying to get across to people that this isn't a pathological issue. This is communication. Challenging behaviour is a message, and the message is we've not listened in any other way. So we've taught you to challenge by not responding.
Can you give us some examples about the challenging behaviors and what the people were trying to communicate through that?
So humans are really simple, aren't they? No, this is a question for Brian.
Well, the evidence would show. No, I'll give you one quick, very quick, because we've any amount of them. We've so many of them. I have a 15-year-old autistic girl at home. Was referred to me for severe self-injury. Okay, she cannot speak, she can't communicate. This is the difference. And as Tony says, what I would advise staff to do, listen with your eyes and your ears. You know, you're looking as well. But she severely self-injuring, medication, you know, psychotropic medication is not helping her. She has to be held safely to stop her from severely hurting herself until we can figure out what's wrong. Ultimately, why is she really severely hitting herself? Because she has a 1 centimetre square piece of glass deep in her ear. Okay? Now, people can decide that, oh, and I've heard it said by medical professionals, autistic people tend to self-injure, but they grow out of it. No, they don't. Okay? They don't unless there's a reason. Okay? Oh, she's just looking for attention. Well, she is. She's looking for you to attend to the fact that she has a 1 centimetre piece of glass in her ear. And so there's an example. You know, it's not her that's the problem. She is having a very significant physical issue that needs to be addressed by a doctor, not by a behavioural specialist, not by a psychiatrist, not by psychotropic medication, but by somebody who partners with her to help people to understand the message she's given us.
My wife, I talk about my wife a lot when I teach and train, so I apologise profusely. And the translator, when I came over in April, Petra, the translator of my book, was saying, "Is Emma coming?" And I was going, "No, it's just me." She went, "Oh." Because I'm the boring one. Because she knew so much about my wife through the book. And I didn't even realise I'd written about Emma in the book. Anyway, but my wife says the one thing people need is decent humans. They don't need behavioural specialists, they don't need psychologists, they need decent humans. You need those other professions when they lack humanity and they lack connectedness, okay? And they lack allies. My example would be similar. I was asked to go and help work out what the problem was in a day service. It was a big day service, 100 people with learning disabilities would attend, and this particular lady that I was asked to assess, I went, "You mean understand?" Yeah, assess sounds better though, you know. It sounds more medical. So, well, let's go and assess her then. And she didn't have very much verbal language. She had a little bit of signs, and she kept signing to me, "I want to go home." And I'd go, "Okay, let's go home." And the service was like, no, she can't go home. We got a contract with social services, and she has to stay here. And what she did, she learned really quickly that people that acted out, who challenged, got sent home. So it didn't take her long to realise that if she thumped a member of staff, she got sent home. Because people wouldn't listen to her saying, "I want to go home," she thumped people because it was less effort, it was quicker. So often it's the environment that shapes up the behaviour. We teach most challenging behaviour because we don't listen to the legitimate communications of people. And in part, we don't listen to them because we don't take difference seriously. Neurotypicals, the people in the boring middle of the bell curve, we're fairly limited in our understanding of what's acceptable. The really interesting people are the people at the edge of the bell curve. They're the people that will save the planet. They're the people who will save the species. There's a wonderful American speaker and writer called Temple Grandin, and she dresses like a cowboy. She's fabulous, and she gave a TED talk not so long ago, and she's autistic, and she talks about her experiences of autism, and she said at this conference, it's really important that you remember, if it wasn't for people like us autistic people, you guys would still be sitting around a cave entrance banging rocks together.
Yeah, I will take this chance to talk a bit on behalf of people with ADHD, because I'm diagnosed with ADHD, and we haven't touched this subject as much. But it came out that most of the inventors that were able to push humanity so much more forward were probably having ADHD as well. So it's like, because it makes them think differently than the boring middle, and that's where the magic happens. But when we talked about how it is to live with such a mind, I think with ADHD it's two very important things. One is people in the middle, neurotypicals, they have filter for what they perceive. I feel like I perceive almost everything, and my brain, it's very hard for him to filter out what's not important. So I would know what that guy's doing, the change of color, and I would notice everything, and it's very hard for me to decide what's important. And the second one is the regulation of emotions. Like the emotions are so big, and it's very hard to regulate them. So I think that's what usually the ADHD community like agrees on, that these are the two most important differences in how we perceive the world. And the funny thing is, as you said, that there's not people with autism, it's very, but autistic people, it's very, very interesting that people with ADHD tend to say, I'm ADHD. Not like I'm the disorder, not that I have. So that's just a funny little detail. But we already kind of touched this, and I absolutely am aware of this, because I have to live with other people, and other people have to live with me. What are the biggest challenges of people living and working with neurodivergent people?
Their own behavior. You know, again, I'll go back to the cohort that I work with. The biggest challenge that the systemic situations that support these individuals have is accepting that their behavior is maybe the problem, not the person we're supporting. Okay, so I use a phrase. I'd say a lot of times, you know, in the kind of services I support, staff go into battle with the client. You know, they're battling with the client, or they're battling with the individual about their choices, about what they want to do, and you know, the things that the ordinary person wants to do: stay up late, drink too much, have sex, watch, you know, a horror movie, all that stuff. We go into battle, and for me, a simple definition of the behavioural difficulties in those contexts is trying to stop somebody from doing something they want to do, or try and make them do something they don't want to do. Okay, so. You know, what are the challenges for, you know, surrounding or by supporting people who are neurodivergent? It's actually self-reflection. I think it's looking at yourself and saying, well, what am I doing that's causing the problem here? And a lot of the time, that's the work that I would do is going in and changing the attitude towards the person. We have no. I genuinely, I'm sure, you know, Tony will speak for himself. I have no interest, or I would say capability, of changing that person. And ethically, we shouldn't do it. From a rights perspective, that is who it is. We have to find a way to change the way people are behaving around them, the way the system is supporting them. And so rather than going to battle with the person, go into battle for the person. If they can't go to the discussions about themselves, you have to go into battle for them.
I think there comes a moment when you're in this line of work and you're supporting families or schools or services to understand the people they support better, when they realise that this behavioural expert or this advisor has come in, and what they've actually done is they've written a support plan for the staff. So when you write a positive behaviour support plan, you invariably are not talking about the individual's behaviour, but how we as staff support the individual better. So Richard Mills was the Director of Research at the National Autistic Society, and to get people's attention at the beginning of lectures, he would say, there's no such thing as autism, there's just rubbish services. And it was a strategy to get people to think that actually, if we get the right environment right, if we think about how we present information, if we allow for processing lag, while you're struggling to go, okay, the guy in the aftershave over there is really putting me off, and that light's putting me off, and I've still got to try and communicate in the meantime so I don't scare these boring people. We need to allow a processing lag for that. So it is about, as Brian said, how we enable people to talk and to support people well, and that means it is pointless to have a service for autistic people. It is pointless to have a service for people with a certain condition or whatever. We need services for people. We don't need units, we need homes. We don't need a care plan, we need a life plan. And we don't need time out, we need time in. We need to teach people skills. That's our job. Our job has to be teachers. And when we're a teacher, we have to try and understand the learning styles of the people we support. Because the reality is, kids don't fail education. Education fails kids.
Tony has made a few references to somebody over the last couple of days called Herb Lovett in conversations with him. And I always use a reference from Herb about those kind of situations. And Herb, if I'm incorrect in this, you can correct me, but I think he used to say, you know, if they can't learn the way we teach, we have to teach the way they learn. And that means we have to change, you know. And I'd see this a lot. I'd see this in schools where they try and force this person who's neurodivergent, autistic, or whatever it might be, to fit into a system that isn't working for them. But the system refuses to. Can I give you one example? Yes. A referral for an autistic child in a classroom who is aggressive to the teaching staff. That's the referral. And invariably, referrals end up being a label, you know, with some attribution to the child. This child is aggressive, can you come and fix the child? I come and I find, and I'm shortening it again, I come and I find a 8-year-old boy who's on medication, the side effects of which are thirst, okay? In a classroom where there's a sink in the corner on a hot day. Right? When he gets up to go and get a drink of water from the sink, the staff make him sit down because you don't go drink in class. That's not okay. And when they stop this child from doing that, he becomes aggressive. And then he's given to me as the problem. So if this was a teaching situation, I'd be saying, what would you do? And sensible people would say, but let him have a bottle of water. Teacher said, no, it's a classroom. You can't have water in the classroom. I said, okay. I said, why not? And she said, because they'll all want one. And I said, okay, give them all one. And she said, well, no, because they'll drink them. And then they'll want more, right? Now, genuinely. And I said, okay, right. One, this child didn't lose his human rights once he set foot into this classroom, okay? You have no right to deny him free access to water. It's here for all of us, okay? And at the same time, I was talking to a teacher who's standing, as she's talking to me, with a bottle of Evian in some designer, cold, insulated bottle. And that's, you know, that's the representation. You know, if you're speaking to somebody who refuses to change how they're doing anything and expects an 8-year-old autistic child with intellectual disabilities to conform, and that is that's what I mean. You go into battle for that child. You don't go into battle with that child, you go into battle for that child.
My daughter once said of her school, it's more autistic than I am. Because autistics aren't supposed to have any imagination, which is a lie. They're supposed to have very fixed interests. So have we all got. But if we're going to change the world and make things better, we need to be focused like a laser on those things. But schools in particular, certainly in the UK and elsewhere clearly, are so focused on having rules without actually thinking about it. They turn people into robots. And often it's the autistic people, it's the people with ADHD that we encounter who are the real humans. I'm asked to talk at various conferences and stuff like that, and early this year I talked at a British Institute lecture about PBS. And basically I was standing up to this room full of professionals to tell them why PBS was dead. We need to get rid of PBS and we need to talk about positive approaches and individualization. So you can imagine it was a bit of a lead balloon. They didn't like it. And I was talking about my brother, and I was talking about my experiences like you, supporting people to have the voice that they're entitled to. So as I was speaking, I was getting a bit emotional, as I do. And at the end of it, the only people that clapped were the parents and the autistic people. And the only person that got up to give me a hug was this autistic woman that had only just escaped a psychiatric institution because she had a personality disorder and didn't understand human emotions. And it's like, this is the most ironic thing in the universe. So one of the reasons I love working in autism, the world of autism, is because it's a far better world. You know, they say what is happening. They don't lie. One of the first kids with autism I worked with, he had autism and ADHD. He had more labels than God. I don't know. He must have been referred to services at conception. He had that many diagnoses. And when I met him for the first time, he went, I'm so-and-so. I went, hi, I'm Tony. He went, you're very fat and bald, aren't you? And I said, yes, I am. And my colleague was saying, he can't say that. I went, he can. I am fat and I am bald. Why can't he say that? Well, it's not the right thing to do. You say. Me and him have got an issue with it. Stop talking for him. Listen to him.
Can I? My example of that is, again, the autistic people I work with, one of them, he chairs his own meeting. He's the chairperson of a meeting about himself. He's the best chairperson we have. You get 10 minutes to talk and you're finished. You get 10 minutes to talk, you're finished. 2:30, go home, meeting over. No time for bullshit, no time for talking, okay? But I always kind of give this analogy that we think we're very interesting, Tony and I, okay? But if we meet some of these people outside here and they come and say, hello, I enjoyed your talk, they might be stuck with us for 2 hours, okay? If they're neurotypical, okay, if we use that phrase, if they're neurotypical, they'll suffer for 2 hours because they're too polite to say, sorry, I was just pretending to be interested, you know. It's 2 hours. After 2 hours, they'll then walk and find their friend and they'll say, that is the worst 2 hours of my life, okay? An autistic person will say after 2 minutes, you're boring, and walk away. And they're dead right. They're exactly right.
There was some research done in America about 20 years ago, and it studied the characteristics of neurodiverse people. And what they found is something really fascinating. And all my autistic friends keep reminding me of this study. And what these psychologists found was if people accurately estimate how much effort a project involves, and if they accurately estimate the rewards of that project, they are either diagnosed as depressive or autistic. And the conclusion is neurotypical people have evolved on this planet to be delusional, because seeing the world as it is doesn't help your mental health. So if you want to know how the world is, ask a neurodiverse person. They tell it as it is.
Well, we have like 5 minutes left before the Q&A. So I would love to ask you guys, because you've been part of some successful inclusions of neurodivergent people. Tell us about 1, 2 examples, like how you changed the ecology around these people so they would be able to fulfill their potential.
Can I start with 1? Can I start? Because there's if I can, I'd like to give you how it's going to happen as opposed to how it did happen. Okay? Because I've lots of people I have supported. You know, myself, I don't like to talk about cases. I like to talk about the people that I've supported over time. you know, you can call them cases, a caseload, but so I can talk about that all day, but if you're talking about ecology, okay, and how are we going to set up a situation that we accept, you know, people who are marginalized or neurodivergent more into the situation. And people may not know this, but you should, that the State Senate recently released a document here in the Czech Republic, a strategy document for 2024 to 2030 for changing the way the services are being provided for people with intellectual disabilities who have behaviors that challenge. Okay, it's groundbreaking in the Czech Republic. You know, Mikhail from Mikasa was involved in it, Peter Treshnak from Jetiu Plinku, Klara Minchkova, the Commissioner for Human Rights, Militia Horsnell, and it's going to change the way people are viewed, okay? And that's the ecology kind of we need to be looking at, because the minute stuff, the little things I can do, I can find glass in somebody's ear, you know, and I can, you know, I have so many examples, I can give you so many examples, but unless the system, the structure accepts that we have to do things differently for these people, I'll keep finding glass in people's ear. And a really important point, my job as a behavior specialist, I don't like the concept of expert at all, but my job as a behavioral specialist, if you want to call it that, is to make myself unemployable. To create a situation where you never need me because the system knows how to work with these people.
So one example I've got is I worked with a school, and they were having a young man with autism due to start that term, and we got to know the child and the family and what he loves, what he hated, and we kind of created a list, and we worked with the parents, because here's a surprise, parents know their children usually, and we came up with this, and we suddenly realized with about 2 or 3 days to go that actually what the parents had failed to tell us, but we picked up, was he could sit still for about 2 minutes. And that was an issue when you're going into reception class, when you need to be sitting still for about 30 minutes, you know. But we noticed that this brilliant young man had got this strategy of drawing chalk circles, right? And that was like his fidget. He was able to put his anxiety and his doubts into these chalk circles, except for he needed a rough surface to do chalk circles on. So like a playground or concrete and stuff like that. So what the school did, and we worked with the school to allow us to improvise for a term. And say, we give it a term, and we reckon we can help the kid do what you guys expect. And they went, okay, go for it. So the first thing is to get the support of everyone in the environment to give it a go. Yeah? And that's why the structure and the statutory requirements are going to be so profoundly important in the future. So with this kid, the plan was he would come into class, we'd give him a chalk, and we'd sit him next to the French doors where he could go out, and after 2 minutes, he would just go, huge chalk circles. And then the next stage of the behaviour support plan was to put paper over the concrete. So he would draw on paper, okay? And then what we did is we would move the paper slightly closer to the classroom and make the paper smaller. So he would go from that, because doing that feels fabulous, you know? It gets rid of all your tension and everything. And we went to that. And he was doing that, and we were getting closer and closer and closer. And then we had a rough surface on a desk put on, and then we put the paper on that outside, and he would sit at the desk and stuff like that. And we put Smarties on the desk as well, because he loves Smarties. So we used a bit of artificial reinforcement just to encourage him. And then as soon as he was happy to do that, we got rid of the Smarties. And then we slowly moved the desk inside and made the paper smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's just like a stimulus control program, we call it, which is a fancy way of saying teaching. That's all. And then before you know it, he was able to sit for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes in more and more acceptable conditions for the other kids. And the other kids were really impressive, and they said, oh, please, miss, I need to go outside and draw a rectangle. And they would try it on, and we go, do you really need a rectangle? No. We don't need a rector. Anyway, so we got him inside, and a few years later, I just happened to pop in, and he was sitting there doodling while the teacher was boring everyone to death. And that's how we learn. And all of those things, well, nothing clever, they're not special, they're just ways of helping the kid do what he needs to do. And as far as I know, he's probably, I don't know, 20 now and taking over the universe because he loved physics and stuff like that. He's probably going to blow up CERN or something, I don't know. And he's probably still doodling. But it's okay to doodle. We doodle. I shake my leg. He doodles. You know, so it's an example of how you can change the environment. And that, to me, is behaviour support. Because it's like taking a behaviour and you build up the skill that they need to make it. So as autistic people say, we need help not getting our asses kicked by neurotypical people. Because it's exhausting. You know, it's exhausting. Trying to live amongst people that go, you shouldn't do that, you should do this, you shouldn't do that, you should do this. It's like, no wonder sometimes they go, you know? No wonder. Goodness knows I've learnt more from my daughter by getting it wrong, but she's always cut me a break to learn.
Can I put one caveat into it all? I'm always very conscious coming here, and I've been coming to the Czech Republic now for 6 years. We're not getting it right back home in Ireland. You know, so never let the perception be that, you know, everything is cured back home in Ireland, you know, or actually they're probably in big trouble because I'm here at the moment. That's not the case at all. You know, we're not getting it right. We have a lot of problems with poor services. We have a lot of problems with abusive practice. We have a lot of problems with staff burnout. So, you know, never let the perception be, you know, that we're coming over here, I'm coming over here preaching, and we're amazing. You know, the exact same discussions we're having here, I'm having in Ireland, and equally in the Czech Republic. I get caught out. I get, you know, kind of. I see good practice. I see good things, and it catches me out. And it happened to me this morning in Mikas's residential service, where I saw an individual who I would have seen on a video 6 years ago, in a very difficult state, behaviourally, physically, psychologically, you know, a family under severe stress. And I saw him today having a totally different life. Just because people he didn't change, he's still the same person, but people changed the way they were supporting him. And that's, you know, that's what you want. You want to be stopped in your tracks. You want the right reasons to stop you. Not because he's having those difficulties, but because he's now seen as a person who needs different type of support.
There's a risk when you import people to talk about this from other places, that you get the idea that Ireland's got it sorted, that England's got it sorted. Let me tell you, England has far from got it sorted, right? But we can tell you where it went wrong. We can tell you what we've learned, as my colleagues in America have taught us what they got wrong in America about inclusion. The end of the day, the lesson is, the only expert you need is to listen to the person. There's this phrase in disability rights movement that nothing about us without us, and that is vital. And what we know from our experience, what we know from working and seeing that day in, day out, is that people that have been considered unable to communicate, unable to speak, have been screaming for years, have been telling us for years. And if we listen to what they're telling us, you don't need to pay for people to come over. You don't need experts. You need, in effect, to listen to the people because they've been telling you. Isn't it remarkable how resilient they are, that they are still willing to give neurotypicals a chance?
I mean, we're still very happy to come to the Colours Festival, don't get me wrong. but the concept of an expert, you know, the person, whoever it is, neurodivergent, ADHD, autism, intellectual disabilities, whatever it is, they're the expert, okay? And I'll give you the last, how long have we got?
We've got 9 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay, can we have another hour? The individual I'm talking about this morning, okay, he has some, can I talk about this, Mikhail? Is that okay? He he has a difficult sleeping pattern. He sleeps quite a lot during the day and he wakes a lot at night. But his quality of life is infinitely better than what it was. And we were having a discussion this morning and he was lying on a beanbag. And he was starting to just doze off, fall asleep. But he was still listening to everything we were saying. And a staff member asked me, said, what can we do about his sleep pattern? You know, when he falls asleep during the day, should we wake him? And the gentleman just opened one eye and he went, nay. And that's it. End of discussion. You know, he has answered the question.
Yeah, just work around that.
Find a way around it.
Tak, máme teďka prostor pro otázky. Pokud byste se třeba chtěli zeptat i česky, já to klidně přeložím do angličtiny. Takže pokud máte dotaz, tak prosím zvedněte ruku. Tak, poprosím mikrofon do třetí řady.
Hi, I would like to ask you, I think that you learn, if you learn something new, I think that you see a lot of things, that you speak a lot of people, and you heard a lot of stories about people with challenging behavior. So have you learned something new in a recent time?
It's a good question. I never stop learning something new, honestly. And I think that there's an expression, a phrase that we have in Ireland, God help the person who is being supported by somebody who thinks they know everything. Okay? You're in big trouble if the people around you think they know everything, okay? Things change. And the people that teach me the most, and I mean, I'm being very honest in this, are the people I support. You know, autism, intellectual disabilities, severe behavioral difficulties, all the labels that you can give them. But they'll teach you, you know, they'll let you know what they want. And you know, Tony said about it earlier, and I said, it's about opening your eyes and ears, and then you're learning something new all the time. These people will teach you. So every day. And from families and from, you know, people you come in contact with. If you think you know it all, it's time to stop.
I feel kind of guilty because I've had a career because people say, oh, he knows about challenging behaviour. And I don't think challenging behaviour exists. I think it's a myth. I think what we got is exotic communication. You know, people ignore you if you go, oh, excuse me, please, but they will listen to you if you punch someone in the head. Even staff you thought were dead for 10 years will suddenly appear. Right? So that's why challenging behaviour goes. But I don't think challenging behaviour exists. I think it is exotic communication because behaviour is behaviour is behaviour. We know, the science is, it has a message. It's about attention, it's about escape, it's about avoiding things we don't like, all of which are legitimate. It's about doing it because it feels good, and it's about doing it because we get things that we need. Even though society may not approve of the behaviour, doesn't mean the function, the purpose, isn't legitimate. So when challenging behaviour as a term arrived, it replaced problem behaviour. Problem behaviour became used saying the person is a problem. And we called it challenging behaviour to say it is our challenge to understand it. Challenging behaviour has never been about the person, it's about us understanding. It is our challenge to understand what is so wrong with the person's life that they feel they've got no option but to hurt themselves.
Tak, tamhle máme otázku, poprosím.
Hi, I would like to ask, how do you do that? How do you tune on the person who has a very specific way of communicating, either verbal or non-verbal? How do you tune on the person when you don't understand what his way of communication is?
Me and my son, Noah, this is why I talk about my family a lot, right? So I don't feel homesick. So when my son Noah was 4, with me one summer, we taught a goldfish to swim backwards through a hoop, right? which we were really impressed with. We don't know if the goldfish enjoyed it, but we just, you know. But the thing is, if we can teach goldfish, who haven't got much language, who are reputed to have the attention span of, well, a goldfish, really, and if we can teach people who are in comas to turn their heads without any consciousness, what the hell is our excuse for not being able to teach people who are behaving and who are conscious new skills? So if a person turns away, that is communicating something to us. If a person is screaming, that is communicating something to us. And our role when we develop plans with people, in partnership with people, is to find better, more efficient ways for them to get the same needs. So if we were to work out by watching that someone is screaming to get attention, we might find an easier way of getting attention. If we notice they've got the ability to thump something, we might have a button. We might organise the environment so staff don't have to be miles away, that they're there. We might fix the ecology. So in PBS, in positive approaches, we talk about fixing the environment, don't fix the person, because the person is always telling us. And if someone's got limited activities, if they think, you know, we think they've got a ritual they need to follow, the intervention isn't to limit that, but to expand it. If they like Coke, they might like Sprite. Other brands are available. If they like going to the park, they might like going to that park. If they like going in a car, it might be to get somewhere, it might be they just like cars. And the feelings that that brings, because they experience a different world, being in a car is sensorily amazing. There's the smell, there's the chatter of the driver who's ignoring me. So it's about finding out what the person is loving about life. So the questions I always ask when I consult is what really annoys the person? And people tell me, and I say, don't do that. And then I say, what do they love? And they go, oh, that's more difficult. And that's the problem. We don't know the person. So find out what the person responds to, what they love, do more of it. Do more of it and expand their interests. And pretty soon, you've got a rapport, and through that, you can develop all kinds of teaching stuff. Don't think you're the teacher, though. You're both students of each other.
And for me, the start point of all that is, to get to that point, is to be with them. You have to be with them. You can't read files, and you can't hear people tell you how difficult they are and aggressive they are and stuff. Be with them. And to go back to that other question, then that's where you learn every day. You know, when you're with them, you see, well, actually, when he does this, I have a lady at home, and she says, nice cream, which everybody used to think meant she wants ice cream. What she wants is, everybody go away. She's saying, I'll scream. You know, so, you know, you have to spend time with people. That's any specialist, 56 seconds, any specialist who comes into an environment and starts telling you what to do, tell them to get out. If they're not willing to spend time in the service, if they're not willing to spend time with the person who's having those difficulties and get to know them, and Tony said a really important word, and I think it's a difficult word to translate in Czech. We've talked about this, rapport. You know, and for me, a very simple definition of rapport is that the person is happy to see you coming. Mm-hmm. When you walk in, they're glad you're here. Simple.
Well, I guess there are so many more questions, and Tony and Brian are such a good sports that they are absolutely willing and very happy to talk with you guys. No, just okay, just Tony. Yeah. Just Tony is as good to. They might regret that. 2 hours. Yeah, if you have 2 hours.
Tell him if he's boring, just tell him.
So you can come and ask them individually. At the very end, I would like to ask for a slide. Máme pro vás připravený slide na závěr s pár odkazy. Pokud vás víc zajímá práce s lidmi s autismem, tak tohle to jsou organizace, které se tomu nějakým způsobem věnují. Hledali jsme něco pro ADHD, ale vypadá to, že lidi s ADHD jsou tak dezorganizovaní, že nejsou schopní vytvořit žádnou takovouhle organizaci. Nicméně existuje ještě jeden způsob. Pokud byste třeba hledali pomoc ať už pro sebe, anebo pro někoho ve svém okolí a nemohli jste ji najít, oslovte svoji zdravotní pojišťovnu a žádejte, ať vám ve vašem okolí najdou specialistu, který se tím zabývá. Měli by být schopní, někteří jsou v tomhle i proaktivní a dá se to najít přímo na jejich stránkách. Thank you so much, Tony. Thank you so much, Brian.
We should